Welcome back to yet another episode of the Bleed Lows podcast as we're coming to you live with some major breaking news as the Los Angeles Dodgers have traded away former top prospect Gavin Lux to the Cincinnati Reds. Jacob Brownson, my co-host, is with me tonight to break down the trade and much, much more and to go over what are the possibilities for the Dodgers infield moving forward. But before we dig into all that, let's thank our sponsor, BetOnline. BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in the 2025 year. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion with the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, college basketball to the NHL and the UFC. BetOnline is the number one sports betting source for the new year. From touchdowns to three-pointers and hat tricks, BetOnline has you covered on every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. And Jacob, let's just get straight into it. It kind of caught me off guard today. I'm relaxing. I'm in a snowed in here on the East Coast in Delaware in my house. I'm trying to put my baby to sleep, getting ready. And then I see on my phone, all hell broke loose. And Gavin Lux, I feel like the writing was on the wall. We've been leading up to it, over the past couple of days, especially after the Hae-Sung Kim signing. But the Dodgers finally did it, and they traded Gavin Lux away to the Cincinnati Reds, as I just mentioned. Before we get into the details on who the Dodgers are getting back, the pick that they received, and what we think the infield plan is looking like in the next couple of weeks when teams get ready to break out for camp next month. What is your overall reaction, just gut reaction for this trade right now?
I was surprised and also not surprised at the same time. I think I was surprised because the team was the Reds. But like you said, it had kind of been leading up to it. We could all kind of tell that Lux was about to get traded. It was just a matter of who and for what. I think a fresh start could be good for him, but it was with the signing of Kim and the recent connections, it seemed like his time in LA was starting to come to an end.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday there was a report that the Yankees and the Mariners were apparently like looking into a trade for Gavin Lux. The Mariners being on the more aggressive side, and that's something that a rumor I've heard and seen thrown around on social media as well. Especially since the Mariners, they are looking for any type of offense that they can get right now. We all know the Mariners have probably the best pitching staff or the best pitching arsenal, and it's in large part to T-Mobile Field being a very pitching friendly environment. So Gavin Lux going there to be an offensive boost, whether it's at shortstop, second base, third base, whatever they wanted to do with him, it did make sense. The New York Yankees as well, it also made sense in my head because they just missed out on re-signing Gleyber Torres. It looks like they were ready to to burn that bridge and move on, and I could see a fit there as well. And it seemed like they're trying to retool a lot of their roster, especially after the Juan Soto, departure. They've been very active, especially getting some former Dodgers over there with Cody Bellinger. The Cincinnati Reds did catch me off guard because it seems like they were a team that had a plethora of infielders. They traded away an infielder in Jonathan India, who was one of the longest tenured Reds on that team, a veteran at this point. I remember when he won Rookie of the Year not that long ago, but they got rid of him, and then they bring in Gavin Lux, another second baseman, primarily infield. I know we've seen him in the outfield before, but we, as Dodger fans, know it didn't really work out there. I think we can pretty much fair to say that Gavin Lux is exclusively probably a second baseman for the rest of his career. Credit, I guess, to the Reds if they want to experiment and trying him out elsewhere. I mean, they have nothing else really to lose in that division right now. But I think when I saw the Reds as the team getting him, I was just a little perplexed of like, all right, well, it seems like the Reds were the ones that wanted him the most. What are the Dodgers getting back in return? And that gets me to my next point where, are you surprised that the Dodgers didn't get a major league ready player? Because I know in our writers group chat for DodgersBeat.com, our writer Alvin on there, he's like, man, I'm surprised we didn't get like a major league reliever or someone along those lines. We only got a draft pick, a comp draft pick, which is supposed to be around the 37th pick, bearing any, CBT extra spending there if it gets pushed back. Are you surprised that this was the return? So the return right now is a minor league outfielder who was drafted last year, Mike Sirota, 23-year-old, just came out of college. We can get into some of his stats later. Are you surprised that this is the return for Lux?
I was initially. I think pretty much everyone was because a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, you're seeing Gavin Lux in the same conversation as Devin Williams. So I think naturally that does it's going to lead to some shock with everyone. Kind of looking back at the deal, I think it's probably a pretty even deal. We'll get into that in a little bit, but Sorota's a good player. I think I was hoping when I saw Reds that it would be Alexis Diaz, since the Dodgers were looking for a reliever. I thought that would be a good fit. But Lux, his value is weird because he did have the second half last year, but in the playoffs he wasn't very good. Before that, he wasn't very good. He's kind of all over the place. I do think it's interesting that they're going to try to play him in the outfield. I guess they're trying to maximize his value, see where they can play him. Not a lot of people remember that Gavin Lux started Game 5 of the 2021 NLDS in center field. So if they ever need him to play center, he could do that, I guess. But yeah, it's an interesting one. I thought it was going to be a major leaguer, but I'm not mad at the package.
And then moving back to Lux here, it seems like it just seems like now is the time in terms of the Dodgers' relationship with Gavin Lux. I mean, you can look back, I'm one of his biggest fans. I've always rooted for the guy. I wanted him to be that top prospect. I mean, he won Baseball America's minor league player of the year in 2019, had a crazy year in AAA that season, gets called up at the end of the year, ends up making the postseason roster and hitting a postseason home run for that Dodgers team that ended up losing in 5 games to the Nationals. But it showed that he had so much potential. And I think what kind of deterred his career is the fact that he was behind Corey Seager for a couple years and then Trey Turner for another year and then the major knee injury and then the defensive issues in 2024 after missing a whole year of baseball. So I think it's an unfortunate series of events in terms of Gavin Lux and the start to his career, because you mentioned his second half last year. It was really good. He was arguably the second best hitter on the Dodgers right behind Shohei Ohtani. He was really clutch for the Dodgers, especially in that July-August rut where, Max Muncy was still hurt. Mookie Betts had the fractured wrist, and then you had who else was out? That's it. Pretty much the entire Dodgers lineup was mostly out. He was hitting, I think, second in the order most of the series, or third. So,
Third.
and he had 304 slash, 390, 508, and then 152 WRC plus. One of the best hitters in baseball in the second half of the season. Didn't really translate to the postseason. He had some moments, game tying sac fly in Game 5 of the World Series, but it seemed like the Dodgers were ready to move on. And you mentioned it. The Gavin Lux, sweepstakes really kicked off when he was mentioned in the Brewers' potential package for Devin Williams, which is where I think a lot of Dodger fans were like saying, all right, how do we go from getting Devin Williams in a trade package to now we're getting a minor league outfielder? It doesn't really make sense here. And maybe that's why the Brewers moved on and went to the Yankees offer and pivoted there, if that's what the Dodgers, their top offer was. With Gavin Lux's play, like, did you expect this trade to happen sooner than later, especially after they signed Kim? Even though Brandon Gomes, the Dodgers general manager, said that, Gavin Lux is going to be the everyday second baseman.
Yeah, I mean, I posted it on X. I know you quote tweeted it or quote posted it, whatever you say these days. Never trust the front office in the offseason when they say that someone is playing a certain position the next season. Things are very fluid. They're always going to change. And it just felt like it was coming. As soon as they signed Kim, you see a left-handed second baseman. Now they have a roster crunch. There's at least some interest in bringing Kike Hernandez back. It always kind of seemed like that was the move. Another thing with Lux last year and why I thought he might be a little more valuable is in that second half, it wasn't just like his numbers just got better. His bat speed went up, his hard hit percentage, I think it was 25.4 to 37.7 off the top of my head. I did a lot of writing on him last year, so I kind of got those numbers. But like he was a completely different player, and then he didn't have the success that you would have liked in the playoffs. So it kind of got sandwiched, the good between the bad. But yeah, I thought the Dodgers were going to get more, but I'm not surprised that they decided that it was time to part with Lux. Especially because you got a guy now coming in who we don't know how he's going to hit, but he's going to defend. He has speed. And he doesn't have the same expectations necessarily that Gavin Lux has, and that might be a good thing as well.
Yeah, when I look at the second half, that's the player that I say he was the healthiest of his career. He had the most confidence in his career. He was batting in a spot in the order where I wouldn't say necessarily the Dodgers depended on him, but for that stretch of games, they kind of did. It was him and Ohtani kind of hitting atop of that lineup, being productive, driving in runs, getting on base. I mean, Lux has never really been a power guy. That's never really been a part of his game. But if you look at that second half, particularly, and you put it into like a 162 game sample size, you're really looking at what his 2019 minor league year was like. A 20 plus home run guy, speed, above average to almost elite defense because he was very good at second base for the most part. I know the advanced metrics don't look too great. He still has, I believe, a negative or a very low outs above average. The fielding percentage was a little bit above league average at the position, but I thought he fielded the position just fine. Other than that, I thought the Dodgers may have saw that and said, hey, maybe we can build off this. I think the October experience or the October play may have hit his stock a little bit. And I feel like the Dodgers, maybe they're doing a thing like kind of with Michael Busch where they're like, all right, let's trade this guy while he's at his peak value right now, because a lot of teams can go off that second half and be like, you know what, maybe we can take something with this player. But that's where it makes sense with the Devin Williams thing. Getting a minor league outfielder is nice. The Dodgers get some more much needed roster flexibility. Now, not only do they get rid of a guy on the 40-man roster, now they don't have to worry about immediately replacing him on the 40-man because this outfielder that they traded for, he was just drafted this past season. So he's not going to be on the 40-man roster for the foreseeable future over the next couple of years. So I can see where the Dodgers are doing this. That's why I compared it to the Michael Busch trade. Get rid of a guy who clearly doesn't really have a definitive spot, despite what Brandon Gomes was alluding to. Because I mean, if you read through, the robot, answer that Gomes was giving, you could say, well, does he really fit in an everyday role? I mean, you have Hae-Sung Kim, who is by and large probably very, very similar to what Gavin Lux is. Defensive first guy, glove first, not much pop, speed, and then that's pretty much it. And then we'll see if the KBO stats translate to the MLB stats. That's not usually a given. So the Dodgers in that sense are also taking a risk. But I just feel like they had to choose between one and the other, and you're going to choose the guy you just signed for a $12.5 million.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but yeah, when you go and get that guy, Gavin Lux becomes a little redundant. And that's ultimately it seemed like that move was to give them a slot to get rid of Gavin Lux and try to maximize his value while they still can. Because they did get good value out of this trade.
Yeah, and then let's look at the return on this trade. I mentioned it's a 23-year-old outfielder. It's the Cincinnati Reds' third overall pick last year. I believe he was their number 14th ranked prospect in their system. Interesting enough, the Dodgers actually drafted this kid, Mike Sirota, in 2021 when he was in high school. He opted to go to college, and he did really well in his collegiate career at a 324, 458, 577 slash, 29 home runs, 111 RBIs across 143 games. So he had a really good career. He was actually projected last season to be in the first or second round, kind of slumped a bit to start off the season, which pushed him to the third. So the Dodgers clearly have had this guy, circled on their player board, their player, development board for quite a while. It seems like they get their guy. I imagine they probably hold on to him. I don't expect them to flip him for another potential deal unless it really makes sense this offseason. Quickly, anything you got on the kid about what value he could bring to the Dodgers farm system potentially in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, fun fact, he's the grandnephew of Yankees legend Whitey Ford. I figured that out today, so there's something. You kind of covered a lot of it. He has really good bat speed with great bat-to-ball skills. I did a little bit of research before. Let's see. he's flashed power throughout his career, but it hasn't been consistent. His freshman and sophomore years, he was very good um, in college, and then his junior year, everything I read said his timing was consistently off. He couldn't really find the timing he wanted. But going into the 2024 draft, he had the second best swing decision out of all bat eligible batters by 643 Sports. So he's making the right decisions at the plate. He has that elite bat speed. The average is somewhere around 75 miles per hour bat speed and great rotational acceleration with the bat. It kind of sounds like I have a thesaurus and I'm just saying things right now, but all of that is very good news. 60 grade speed, so he can go. He's also a very good center fielder. He tracks balls well. He runs good routes, and he has a above average arm for a center fielder. And like you said, he was drafted below his projection. Even going into the 2024 draft, people still had him a lot higher. I think he was the number 50 overall prospect, and he fell to the third round. So there's absolutely some upside to this guy.
Yeah, and like I mentioned earlier, it's a guy that we're not going to see probably for maybe a year to 2 years. He's not going to be on the 40-man roster, so the Dodgers don't have to worry about that aspect in terms of him taking up a roster spot. I think the Dodgers get some depth. The ability of seeing a trade in for a draft pick in baseball is still kind of new to me. But they do get that added benefit as well. And it does actually help because that pick is projected to be around 37th. The Dodgers, with all the draft penalties, weren't projected to pick until 40th, the 40th overall pick. So clearly the Dodgers are getting some more draft flexibility as well, because when you're a team like the Dodgers that spend as much as they do, you see the penalties. I know the MLB and a lot of other fans think there's no such penalties that the Dodgers face when they spend, even when they defer the amount of money that they do. No, the first penalty is the draft. Your spot moves back almost, I believe, 10 spaces for the first tier that you move into the CBT.
Yeah.
And it can continue falling back year in and year out if you're a repeat offender. And the Dodgers are a repeat offender. They like to spend that money. So the best way to continue the success is when you draft and develop well, and the Dodgers know that as well. So sometimes you have to give up a player like Lux, who does. I would still say Lux does have high upside still, because I just really don't think he's reached his peak. And I've even mentioned it on DodgersBeat.com in some of my writing. I mentioned it in a couple episodes here as well. Lux did have some good draft stock, or not draft stock, trade stock. 2 years of arbitration still left. He is projected to hit under 3 million this year. I think it was like $2.5 to $2.6 million this upcoming season. Then you get him in for an additional year, arbitration 3 after that. And he can, if you want, like we said, that it seems like the Reds are going to make him a utility player. I mean, he does give you some versatility there. He has logged in innings in the infield, a couple positions in the outfield as well. So I think he did have some good trade value. I think the Dodgers, while on paper doesn't look like an even trade, I think in the grand scheme of things, the Dodgers got what they wanted. They cleared a 40-man spot. They got better draft, flexibility. And then they have the ability now, a 40-man roster spot is open for whether they want to sign a relief pitcher in the next couple weeks, like a Tanner Scott, who they've been heavily interested in. And then we got the Roki Sasaki stuff, which is supposed to pick up extremely fast over the next week or two, because he has to sign, I believe, by January 20th or 23rd.
23rd.
And today it's the 6th. So that countdown's coming as well. I think the Dodgers are in a good spot in terms of their overall roster. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think they're still going to add Kike Hernandez before the year starts. I think you might even see Chris Taylor's name start to get thrown around a little bit. And then I do think they're going to add at least one reliever. So there's still going to be more moves made to clear roster spots. Just wanted to touch really quickly. I think people kind of underestimate the value of a 37th pick. Because in other sports, like 37 is not that good. In baseball, a 37th pick is very valuable. And like you said, the Dodgers are constant repeat offenders when it comes to that luxury tax and the losing pick. So it's not often they have the 37th pick. So that is really good for the Dodgers. And like you said, the Dodgers are in a good spot with this trade. They needed to clear a spot. They're probably going to make another trade. They still have 4 days to find a home for Diego Cartaya. before they put him on waivers. So there will be more moves on the way.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I would want to pivot right now. So obviously, looking at the roster for this upcoming season, Gavin Lux is out, and now we have a bundled infield. You could say still we got a couple utility players in the roster. Chris Taylor's a guy who I've been pushing for the Dodgers to move, not because I hate him or anything like that. I just look at the amount of money he's earning and the amount of productivity that he's giving the Dodgers does not equal the value anymore. I believe he's set to earn $13 million this year, has like a 12 million club option that'll most certainly get declined by whatever club he's on, whether it's the Dodgers or somewhere else. When you look at this roster right now, let's go with the first part of this question. Is Mookie Betts still the shortstop? Like, because I feel like with second base opening up, that should be his natural position. And that's where, if I'm Dave Roberts, Andrew Freeman, Brandon Gomes, I'm going to say, let's have a conversation with Betts and say, hey, now it's open for you. We have a plethora of shortstops on the roster, whether it's Tommy Edman, Hae-Sung Kim, and Miguel Rojas, who is coming back for this upcoming season. Or are you still going to run Mookie Betts out at shortstop because it's Mookie Betts?
I would love to see Mookie Betts at second base over shortstop. I don't think the Dodgers are going to do that. I think Mookie wants to play shortstop. I'm also wondering what their comfort level is with him doing both, because you have Miguel Rojas, Tommy Edman. You have platoon situations where you could have Rojas play short and Betts play second, or you put Edman at second, Pages in center, Betts at short, flip those. There's a lot that they can do with this current roster, which is why Gavin Lux was very expendable. Trading him allows them to get a guy like Pages a lot more run. But certainly I would want Mookie Betts to play second, but I don't think that's the way the Dodgers are going to go.
When you look at the infield projections in your head right now, you're Andrew Freeman. What are you potentially doing with the players that you have? You got Max Muncy at third, you got the middle infield, which is what we've been talking about right now. And obviously you have Will Smith behind the dish and Freddie Freeman at first. So really right now it's like, what are you doing with the platoon matchups in the middle infield?
Yeah, I mean, Max Muncy's a lock at third. I do think they'll add Kike, and when they do that, he'll get some run at third against lefties. In the middle infield, I think it really depends, because against lefties, you can have Edman play either position or he can play center. You want to get Rojas out there against lefties. So you're looking at probably against lefties, Rojas and Betts, second and short, kind of, but then you could move Edman to second and have Pages play center. Pages might play left over Conforto too. So it really, there is so much that they can do with what they have right now as far as platoons. Against righties, you're going to see Kim out there a lot, I would imagine, and Betts. That's probably more often than not going to be your middle infield against righties. So it's just the Dodgers can kind of do whatever they want. I think James Outman's going to be fighting for a spot too, so that could get Edman at second more, because you're going to have James Outman potentially playing center against righties some. So I don't think second base is going to be an everyday role at all. I think it's going to fluctuate a lot. Dave Roberts is going to have a lot of decisions to make over the course of the year with everyday lineups.
A big part of this, and I think getting rid of Lux kind of signifies it, is we mentioned Kim a lot already this episode. I didn't get I didn't get a chance to really talk about Kim and the signing with you. I know you've posted on it on social media, so anyone that's listening to this and following the channel, be sure to check out Jacob's Twitter profile. He's got a lot of in-depth analysis on there. But in terms of, let's pivot back to Kim real quick and give me your quick overall thoughts. Were you surprised, one, by the move that the Dodgers actually landed him? And what is your overall, I would say, confidence level that he's going to translate from the KBO to the MLB? Because we've seen a lot of these Korean baseball players, at least in their first season, kind of struggle. I'm interested in what your take is on that. Because like I said, I think it's a risk for the Dodgers to take a guy that's never played in the MLB baseball to say, hey, you're going to take over wouldn't say a proven guy in Lux, but at least a serviceable bat and fielding guy.
Yeah, it did surprise me a little bit, just because the Dodgers weren't really linked to him until kind of the last day. I hadn't really thought about him at all until I found out that his posting deadline was like 24 hours away. Because he was linked heavily to the Mariners, the Padres were involved. I believe the Angels were involved too. So as far as that, it did surprise me. But once I found out, they kind of talked about how he was a Dodgers fan right before he signed. I asked some questions, kind of heard from this person that told me he was a Dodgers fan. So as far as that, I thought if the Dodgers offered him, there was a good chance he would be a Dodger. I It's hard to tell if he's going to translate. Great bat to ball skills, I think that does translate. But you're not seeing the same. You're seeing much better pitching at this level, so it's also a lot harder to make contact. His defense is going to play anywhere. He's a freak defensively, and speed plays everywhere. So at the very least, you'll have a very good defensive player who can run fast, which that has some value. But it is a question of if his bat will play. I sure hope so. If I had to bet, I would say it's not going to play very well next year. But you never know. Maybe he comes out and he's a very serviceable guy, and maybe he's not. But I do like the deal. It's a cheap deal. It's a very low risk, high reward kind of deal. So I'm excited to see what he's got.
I think at most he's like, what production offensively do you want out of your 9-hole hitter? Because that's where he's going to slot right now. You're in a lineup with multiple all-stars. I mean, I've seen projected lineups with like Will Smith, Max Muncy batting sixth in the lineup. Like, to have that lineup protection is just going to help you. And it really is just like, I look at it on paper and it's like Lux and Kim were like 1A and 1B. And it's like the Dodgers decided to get a guy locked up for possibly 5 years, $22 million. If it doesn't work out, then it's only a 3-year, $12.5 million commitment, where Lux is, 2 years under control, but then he's projected to be a free agent. And we've seen how the market has been unfolding even for bench bats and platoon players now. So clearly the Dodgers, I think, financially think they have a better fit flexibility wise in terms of payroll with Kim. I like it just because of what you've mentioned. The defense will play, the speed will play, the big questions, the bat. But I think being with the players the Dodgers have, being surrounded by the players the Dodgers have, I think he's going to benefit like that. Because it's not like the dude for the Giants last year. What's his name again?
Jung-Hoo Lee.
Yeah, Jung-Hoo Lee was like projected to like immediately transfer over and help a Giants team that didn't really do a lick offensively the year before. And then unfortunately he gets the shoulder injury crashing into the wall and then is out the rest of the season. But that's what Kim doesn't need to be. Kim just has to be a plug and play guy. And that's where it kind of gets back to like what's the infield looking like here? I do agree with you. I think Mookie Betts is going to get the runaway at shortstop. I think he wants to do it. And I think since he wants to do it, they're not really going to take that away from him, because I'm fully confident that if he gets a full winter to work on it, to work on the throwing mechanics, because that seemed to be the biggest issue for him, I think he'll be an above average defensive shortstop. And offensively, he will be the best shortstop in baseball. You put both of those together, then he is the best overall shortstop in baseball. And I can confidently tell you that. Just like if you move to second base, I would say he's the best second baseman in baseball right there. So the Dodgers roster, they value flexibility, they value versatility, they value players that can, hit off the bench. They can value players that can go play one position to start the game and switch to another position to end the game. That's something that's been the Dodger way for like the past 6 to almost 10 years now. So clearly the Dodgers valued it so much, where Lux really wasn't giving you that. We saw that he couldn't be a shortstop. We've seen him play third base a handful of times. The outfield experiment just didn't work well. I mean, go look at some of the footage back there. I mean, hell, they even left his, outline of when he crashed into the wall and nearly died out there in 2021. So Kim gives you the added benefit where he can play third, he can play shortstop, he can play second base, those middle infield spots. He's almost elite there with the glove. And he's actually logged in a couple spots with a couple innings in the corner outfield. I don't think he's really going to be playing there for the Dodgers. Middle infield, maybe third base to give Max Muncy a rest day makes sense. I also agree with you. I think Kike Hernandez is almost a lock to come back at this point. I think they're really just going to wait it out until almost spring training like they did last year, get him on another 1-year deal. We know what we get from him in the regular season. we're signing him for the October player that he is. And if he can be an above average bench bat with the glasses now, like he was in the second half last season, that's another plus for the Dodgers right there. I'm really confident with the way that they're kind of building this team right now. You got your superstars, but then you got your plug and play guys. I think the last thing for me before we kind of look into what else the Dodgers could do for the rest of this offseason, I think the big question is just Chris Taylor. It's like, what do you do with this guy? He's in his 30s, last year of his contract. Do you try to trade him? Do you eat some of the money? I feel like me and you are on the same wavelength here where it's like we should probably try to get rid of Chris Taylor at all costs. And I think the Dodgers getting rid of Lux means that, there's no like relationship that's worth saving with the Dodgers if they feel they can make their roster better.
Yeah, and if you think about it, let's put together a hypothetical lineup again against a righty. You have all the typical guys. You're going to have Conforto and left, Teoscar and right, Freddie at first, Will Smith, Max Muncy. Let's say you start Tommy Edman in center, Mookie Betts at short, and Kim at second. That means you have Rojas on the bench. You have your backup catcher, so Austin Barnes on the bench. You have Chris Taylor right now. You're probably going to have Kike Hernandez, and there's another name I'm not remembering. So if you bring Kike in, Andy Pages, and you're also going to have James Outman fighting for a spot potentially. So there's a lot of bodies right there, and some of them don't fit. And one of those that just doesn't fit if you bring back Kike Hernandez is Chris Taylor. I just don't see how Chris Taylor has a role on the team next year. I really just don't. They're gonna have to find something to do with him, or they're not bringing Kike back. And even if they do keep Chris Taylor and don't bring Kike back, there's still other moves that are gonna have to be made. Like the Dodgers they have a plethora of position players right now that could be big leaguers. So I don't, and you've got young talent coming up. Alex Freeland is going to need a spot at some point. You got Dalton Rushing down there. You've got a lot of guys that are ready to hit big league pitching. And that's, all due respect, something Chris Taylor hasn't really done very much the last couple of years. And it just kind of seems like his time with the Dodgers is almost certainly coming to an end.
Yeah, I mentioned at the beginning of the offseason where it's like, if you can get rid of Chris Taylor, by any means, whether say the Dodgers can't find a trade partner and they end up filling their roster, say they bring Kike Hernandez back on a 1-year deal, they still plan on giving, James Outman a opportunity to compete for a spot. You have Andy Paez more than likely looking for a platoon or bench role for a corner outfield or center field. There's not enough roster spots for the players that the Dodgers have right now. Maybe you're the Dodgers. Money is but an object to you. Maybe you just eat the $13 million that he's owed and just DFA him and get rid of him, send him on his way, try to trade him, I think is the best bet right now, and eat majority of the salary to get some type of, package back. But I think that's the last main thing in terms of shakeup in the roster. When I look at what they're likely going to add, relief pitcher, and it seems like Roki Sasaki is the next bet here over the next couple weeks. Do you disagree, agree? What are you thinking there, especially in the Sasaki sweepstakes? Because we're starting to see more and more of the international pool money kind of seeing where teams are prepared to spend their 2025 pool money, and the Dodgers, they haven't been linked to a single top 35 international free agent. So a lot of signs are pointing that all chips are in on Sasaki. Are you also leaning that way?
Yeah, I kind of agree. I'm very confident in Roki Sasaki being a Dodger, especially after seeing that lawsuit from the Padres today and seeing that his name was dropped in the lawsuit. That's not something I'd want to be a part of if I haven't even pitched in Major League Baseball yet and my name is being brought up in a lawsuit. That's a whole other topic. But yeah, I'm fairly confident Roki Sasaki is going to be a Dodger. I think other clubs will have a good run, but the whole way it's been Sasaki to LA. And the only person saying that's not the case is Jim Bowden. So at a certain point, I think you have to believe the smoke and that there's fire. And I think this fire is raging, and Sasaki's going to be a Dodger. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Sasaki is the final get. I think we're in January right now. Pitchers and catchers report early next month for the Dodgers. They have to get ready and get into spring action before every other team besides the Cubs, because both the Cubs and the Dodgers have to start the season early. Dodgers doing it back-to-back years, first in Korea this past season, now in Japan this upcoming year. So clearly they want to get their entire roster set and straight right now, whether they're dealing with the 26-man active roster. Clearly there's going to be some 40-man spots that open up by the time when the 60-day IL opens up, because you're going to see some guys transferred. We haven't even mentioned Kershaw, who's more than likely, I would say 99.9% coming back, but they're going to wait for that, deadline or opening of the 60-day IL to put him on there. But I think the Dodgers want to get this stuff wrapped up before January is over. So Sasaki having to sign by the 23rd, all signs point to the Dodgers. I think that's going to happen. And we've just been seeing more and more reports from more and more reporters, insiders, relief pitching and a free agent relief pitching ad. And they said Brandon Gomes himself said that they don't like trading for relievers. They're not opposed to signing them in free agency. And it seems like they've been targeting the big one right now. I'm interested to see how his market plays out, because I don't know how comfortable I would be giving him the deal that he wants. I wrote a little bit ago, Tanner Scott is the name that they've had circled for a couple months now. And it seems like he wants like a 4-year, $80 million deal. I think that's a hefty asking price. Would you be willing to give Scott that much money, or are you going to kind of pivot here to someone else?
I'm not going to 80, and I don't think any team is going to 80. I would be comfortable with 4 around 60 to 68. You might be able to convince me to get to 72. There is no way I'm ever going to 80. I would even do a 5th year if he would go a lot lower on AAV, or 3 years with higher AAV, but not much higher. So maybe not 3 years. 4 years, 60 to 68. Throw in like a bag of chips and I'll give him 72. And maybe a 5th year if it comes down a lot, but I don't think there's any way he gets 80 million.
Yeah, I think what we can agree on with everything here is that over the next couple of weeks, couple of days, the Dodgers are going to be really, really active in the trade and free agent market. You already mentioned Cartaya. He's the one that they kind of have to make a decision on, whether they put him on waivers or they trade him over the next, I believe, 4 or 5 days, something along those lines. They have to make a decision on how they value Chris Taylor, what he brings to the team moving forward. Kike Hernandez is still out there. Roki Sasaki is still out there. There's multiple free agents that are out there. I mean, hell, what if they just bring up the Nolan Arenado stuff again and they're like, hey, now we have a roster spot open. Let's bring him on by. I don't know what they want to do there. Seems like his market kind of just fell apart. But there's a lot of moves that the Dodgers can make. But I can soundly say, and we can close this out and get your thoughts real quick on this. After the Dodgers won the World Series in 2020, I thought they did a lot of good things in that offseason. They ended up signing Trevor Bauer, who was the top free agent starting pitcher that offseason. They reinforced some of their bench pieces. They had the youth movement. I can wholeheartedly say that this team is miles better than what it was last year, and they won the World Series last year. Do you agree with that? Because it just seems like they've done everything in their power to make this team way better. Just rotation, lineup, bench. Seems like on all regards they're better, and they're still trying to improve. I mean, they showed it today by trading away Gavin Lux, who we're doing this episode for.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. That I think people have kind of forgotten the Dodgers added Blake Snell. You have Michael Conforto in left field instead of Jason Hayward at the start of last year. They've not lost anyone really besides Walker Buehler, who is a replaceable arm given what he provided in the regular season last year. We'll see if they can replicate his postseason success, but in the regular season, they can absolutely replicate what he did last year. So they've added pieces everywhere. It's a very good team. It's one of the better Dodger teams that we've seen in a little bit. There's always going to be like the 2021 team where you had Seager and then you had Trey Turner out there and Bellinger. And that team was amazing. But I do think this is a very good team. You're looking at a 105 win team at I'm not going to say at least, but I would be very confident that this team wins 105 games.
Yeah, I think all signs are pointing that, especially if they stay healthy. That's the big thing for the Dodgers. I mean, they won 98 games this past season when it seemed like, they pretty much lost everybody that they could lose. And this upcoming season, I think they're going to try to prevent that with load management. That's my key phrase, taking it from the Lakers. Yeah, I think it's excited to get. I think it's excited for this upcoming year. It's right around the corner. We're in January now, February next month. That's when pitchers and catchers and spring training officially starts. But the big thing today was the Gavin Lux trade, and I think it just shows how hard the Dodgers and how willing they are to improve their team, even if it means, trading away, I would say, a fan favorite to some, a highly regarded former top prospect and a guy that is probably well revered in that clubhouse. Really good dude. Gotten to know him a little bit, seen him in the clubhouse there talking around other players as well. So it sucks to lose Lux, but I think moving forward, the Dodgers are in a really good spot. Jacob, any other comments about anything that transpired today, anything you're looking forward to before we end tonight's episode?
Not really. I look forward to seeing the next couple weeks, hoping for Tanner Scott, hoping for Roki Sasaki, and then getting ready for pitchers and catchers to report. I think we're all waiting. It's time. I'm ready.
Yeah, that'll do it for this episode of the Bleed Lows podcast. If you are a new person that's watching this right now, be sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell. We do have multiple websites. We have the Bleed Low Spanish version of the podcast that has episodes usually every week. We have this Bleed Lows podcast here where we're breaking down the latest rumors, recapping games in the postseason, regular season, the latest news, all that stuff, and Jacob and I's hot takes. So be sure to subscribe to continue to get more information about that. We also have DodgersBeat.com, which is where we're posting content pretty much every single day, multiple articles, whether we're dropping breaking news, kind of giving our thoughts and opinions on where the roster is going to go. I know I have a lot of things to write about, especially with the infield, outfield, the total roster, how it's shaping up to be. So be sure to check that out. But other than that, just make sure you guys like and subscribe, and we will see you on the next one. This episode was brought to you by Bet Online. The game starts here. Have a good one, guys.